Hi, this is Marlene and a warm welcome from Glasgow, Scotland to all around the world. In this series of Marlene and Friends, I'll be sharing with you the most amazing group of people who have all the skills and expertise to make our world one of health and peace for all who live here, humans and non-humans alike. My friend and fellow activist Jim Morris Hicks has a refreshingly simple solution to complex problems. When enough humans simply choose to eat whole plant-based foods, it will be the biggest win-win in the history of the world, no less than our future as a species is hanging in the balance. As a board member of Colin Campbell Centre for Nutrition Studies, Cornell University, Jim works daily educating the world why we should be eating mostly plants. He will be one of the key speakers, along with his co-author Dr. Kerry Graff, and they will be telling their four-leaf story at the 4th Annual International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference in Anaheim. Alongside friends such as Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, you will find many other well-known pioneers at this great event. Jim's two successful books, Healthy Eating, Healthy World and The Four-Leaf Guide to Vibrant Health, are available on his website or on Amazon. Hi, I'm Marlene Watson-Tara in Service for a Healthy World. My guest today is my fabulous friend, Jim Morris Hicks, a relentless and amazing writer, speaker and activist who's promoting health, hope and harmony on planet Earth. As a board member of Colin Campbell Centre for Nutrition Studies, Cornell University, a question Jim is often asked is, how does a guy go from being a senior corporate executive with Ralph Lauren to trying to save the planet with healthy eating? Jim, a huge, big, warm welcome. I'm so excited to interview you today.
Thank you. Thank you. You want me to answer that question?
Yeah. Okay, well, first of all, I want to say to you, I love your passion and your vision. And actually, I think I might have found a male version of me who writes to the world daily. You're now up to 900 blogs. So when and why did you begin to study what we eat from a global perspective?
Well, the background, I guess, it goes back to my days in college as an industrial engineering student. Mm-hmm. Industrial engineers like to look at the big picture of anything we study. We like to understand that big picture, what kind of things affect other things before we start messing with the whole system. So during my days at Ralph Lauren and other jobs, I always looked at the big picture, and I was always trying to save my employer money and increase profits for the organization I was working for. But then a few years after I left Ralph Lauren, I just got curious about the optimal diet for humans. Uh-huh. And I won't go into the story behind why I got curious, because that's another whole telecast, but I got curious, so I started. That was in late 2002, early 2003, and fortunately the internet was in full force right about that time. Yeah. And I was able to study the optimal diet for humans. And over the course of about, I'd say, 6 weeks, I read 20, 30 books on the topic. I was on Amazon. I was ordering books right and left, everything from Atkins to Zone, A to Z. And by Memorial Day, I had come to the conclusion that the optimal diet for humans was the one defined by Colin Campbell, who I'd found on the internet as well, long before the China study came out. Mm-hmm. But over the Memorial Day weekend, 2003, I read 2 books, one by John Robbins, Diet to America, and one by Howard Lyman, Mad Cowboy. And those 2 books, while they touched on health, primarily looked at the environmental impact of what we are eating. Sure. And that's when I had what I refer to as my blinding flash of the obvious. And I'm so glad you had it. I said, oh my God, we are eating the wrong food around the world, the developed world. Because most of the world still eats mostly plants. Sure. But 2 or 3 billion of us are now eating meat, dairy, egg, and fish at every meal. Mm-hmm. And it's grossly unsustainable. Mm-hmm. So that was the beginning.
That is unbelievable. It's fantastic. Well, we're all very excited to have you in the gang now, Jim Morris Hicks. I can't believe how many blogs you've written. I thought I was the queen of blogging. You created the 4-leaf model for healthy eating and the 4-leaf survey, which is used by Cornell University on their plant-based nutrition course. Can you explain the concept to the listeners, what that is?
Sure. I'll hold up a copy of my book that I co-wrote with a medical doctor, Dr. Kerry Graff. And on page 11 of that book, in the chapter entitled, Why is 4-Leaf Needed? And it's basically, we felt like it was needed to address the overwhelming confusion around the world about what we should be eating. Page 11 contains a huge list of 71 different dietary plans, beginning with Atkins and going to Zone, so it's A to Z.
Incredible.
About 10 or 12 of those are quite healthy plans, and the rest of them are not so healthy. But I felt like at the time, this was back in 2011 that I came up, or 2010, I came up with a scaled approach whereby I would have a scale to assess how close are we getting to the optimal diet as defined by T. Colin Campbell. And T. Colin Campbell defined it as the closer we get to a diet of whole plant-based foods, the better off we will be. Now, many of the doctors out there, many you've had on your show, kind of debate one another. They all have their own plan. They all have their definition. But I know all those guys. I like all those guys. They're pioneers. They're my heroes. But I concluded that all of those people agree with Dr. Campbell's definition. And that takes all the confusion out of it. And so Dr. Campbell, and it also implies the 4-leaf scale. Let me talk about the 4-leaf scale. And I reviewed this with Dr. Campbell at his breakfast table. At the time, I was calling it an Olympic scale: 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, or gold medal, silver, platinum, But I wanted a scale. I wanted to figure out how close can we get and just go take it step by step. So I showed it to Dr. Campbell and at his breakfast table in Ithaca, New York, and he liked it. He said, "This is great." He said, "I love the way you're emphasizing the positive of maximizing the percent of your calories from whole plants instead of a long laundry list of what we cannot eat." Nobody likes to hear what they cannot eat. But if we stress what you should be eating, and we can get up to 60, 80, 90%, it implies some wiggle room. We don't have to, everybody doesn't have to be 100% whole food plant-based in order to reverse heart disease, in order to save the ecosystem and all of these animals. So eventually it morphed into a 4-leaf, and actually it started with 5 levels. One level was no leaf, and that was under 20% of calories from whole plants. Well, the average American and European gets less than 10% from whole plants. So what I noticed when I was out at bookstores and at trade shows, people would take my survey and they would score at the no leaf level. And so I didn't like telling everybody you scored at the lowest level. So I created a new level. So I had no leaf was estimated at under 10% of calories from whole plants. Better than most was 10 to 20. And then it went into the 1-leaf level at 20 to 40. And by the way, 20 to 40 is like 5 to 8 times better than the standard American diet or the no-leaf level, and so or unhealthful diet level. So, anyways, 2-leaf was 40 to 60, 3-leaf was 60 to 80, and 4-leaf was 80 and above. And people like the implied wiggle room that they can eat what they want to eat on occasion, but move in the direction. Some people will go directly to 4-leaf, and not ever look back. Other people, like my son, took a year or so to get, and now he eats better than I do.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear it. That's fantastic. Well, there's a lot of criticism right now about the whole thing with the US government on their latest fight against cancer campaign. And I know you've been a huge activist and you're bombarding Vice President Joe Biden with, your letters of what you want to see happen. And I know, the meat and dairy lobbyists, the industry in America is huge and vast. But for change to come about, we have to speak out as human beings. So what do you see happening? What's happening to the response? Are you getting response back from your correspondence?
I have not heard directly back from the White House yet.
Okay.
But today there is a poster-sized letter printed on 18 by 24-inch foam poster board with a letter on that delivered to the White House today.
Fantastic! Now, congratulations.
Now, I think the odds are low that it will get read, but that's the fifth step I've taken, and I'm gonna keep working on this path because nothing like this has happened before. And what is thrilling to me is that, and I've talked about, we need a president that's one term. That way he or she could make a lot of changes, wouldn't have to worry about getting elected again. Well, these two leaders that we have, Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Biden is 73 years old, I think. Barack is not that old, but neither one of them will ever run for public office again. They do not have to worry about the special interests. They don't have to worry about constituencies. They can have a new constituency, and that constituency is cancer victims all over the world, and one of which is Joe Biden's late son, Beau, who died in, I think, May of 2015. That's part of the reason I think he was assigned the task. And, I just think the fact that they are calling it a moonshot, which means we're going to pull out all the stops and be exploratory and really get to the bottom of this. I don't think they have any idea about the whole food plant-based cure for cancer at this time. But I say that I did post a blog in 2012 about Barack Obama and his knowledge of the whole food plant-based diet. I saw a video of him. It was a 2008 video while he was campaigning for president the first time. He was in Florida. A young woman at a high school with vegan on her T-shirt asked him.
I saw the interview.
Asked him a multi-part question. He answered it precisely correct. And I'm just thinking, if Joe would just ask the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All he's got to do is ask the question. John Kelly said it in his book. The fact that the China Study book did not create an enormous flood of new cancer research to study and find out if that lab research was transferable to humans. And no human studies have been done.
I know, because they know it's right. Colin Campbell, who I love dearly, he should be up at the White House right now. Of course, we know that. So, but, always remember, and I do as well every day, I act as if it was impossible to fail, as if it were impossible to fail. Remember the song, The Power of One? I think about all these things. Nelson Mandela, bless the beautiful soul of that man, he kept saying the most powerful way to change the world is through education. So that's what you're doing, that's what I'm doing, that's what everybody on this series is doing. So that's what inspired me to put all the voices together. So we just keep going, Jim, and I admire all the work that you're pushing towards getting Colin Campbell, Dr. John Kelly, who will be on the series in a few weeks, from Ireland, an amazing doctor who's treating his patients with exactly what Colin Campbell suggests in the China Study book, and he's having wonderful results, as many teachers like myself around the world have in macrobiotics and different other healing modalities. So on what principles do you think we can move back to sustainability? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a great many thoughts on that, and it all boils down, in my mind, to leadership. As trained as an industrial engineer and then a master in business, and a lengthy career in a number of senior executive roles, including executive vice president with Ralph Lauren, I learned that basically most if not all problems in business are attributed to leadership or lack of.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, we as a species, and the wealthiest among us, the top 2 billion, 3 billion of us, are eating the wrong food.
Yeah.
And it's destroying our ecosystem. That's the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. The win-win is that it's also destroying our health, and so there's something in it for everybody, and it just makes so much sense. It saves so much money in the short term. It saves lives, and so I look at it as leadership. My whole background from engineer to executive, and then the last 15 years I've been an executive recruiter, and I have my own firm, and that's enabled me to have the freedom to write books and be an activist in as much time as I choose to do so. But as an executive recruiter, it all boils down to finding that key executive that is equipped to do what needs to be done in the organization. Mm-hmm. Well, the key executive we need in this organization is planet Earth. The human beings of planet Earth need a leader who is globally recognized, preferably a globally recognized, well-funded leader who's highly respected for his or her integrity. And I have appointed myself the executive search assignment to find and recruit that leader. Mm-hmm. Now, people tell me I've lost my mind, but I know that if, let's take Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Should they actually stumble upon the path and start really openly looking at what whole food plant-based diet can do for cancer and start promoting that and let the world know that they're going to be studying that and supporting and trying to find the truth here, because so far there's only one nutritional scientist in the world that's really stood out for this approach, and there's a handful that have agreed with him, but none of them have come forward publicly and stated that they highly respect and believe the work of T. Colin Campbell of Cornell. And that's because if they do, their career is over.
Absolutely, 100%. People talk the talk, and when it comes to making change or speaking out, it becomes uncomfortable. I mean, we see it all the time, and if it's affecting their potential in the world to make money, they won't do it. I remember at the time when Bill Clinton switched to a plant-based diet, and it was exciting for, people like myself and you and people that have taught this a long time, thinking, that's all it takes, one leader, one person to kind of... It's not that we are weak-willed in any way, but you need a big voice. The sadness for me is we live in such a celebrity culture. If I have a celebrity talking my talk, like I have asked Madonna to write a song for the series, Change Must Come, because change must come. Now, if Madonna put that pen to paper and wrote a song and we were all in the chorus, that would move billions of people towards what we're doing. Would you agree?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about the kind of leader that would be able to spend billions of dollars. Now, billions, it's all relative. We spend $3 trillion in the United States alone for health care, most of which is spent on chronic disease, which is totally unnecessary. So we need to spend whatever money it takes. If this leader that I'm talking about, leader or a handful of leaders that work together, could organize a massive global awareness campaign full of videos and Twitters and Facebook and social media, billboard advertising, TV, it was in your face. And I've studied a little about advertising. My daughter was an advertising major at the University of Georgia, and I always kind of was fascinated with the way advertising works. And there's a term they use called effective frequency. How many times do you have to hear a message before you believe it, and then before you act on it? And now, something as crazy as giving up meat and dairy is going to take a lot of repetition for most people, including medical doctors.
Yes.
And I think our biggest roadblock in this whole battle is what I refer to as the protein myth, and that's the mistaken belief by almost all of the best educated, wealthiest people in the world. Mm-hmm. And that belief is they truly believe that we all need to eat animal protein to be healthy. And that is a huge roadblock, and it's locking the brains of the brightest, most powerful, wealthiest people in the world.
Yeah, because
it only takes one leader to start spending the money to get the number of frequencies of the truth out there, so that people begin to hear it and talk to their friends about it. You've been hearing these messages. They come from people like Madonna and Bill Clinton and Martina Navratilova. Messages from credible people, through all kinds of mediums of communication. This could happen pretty quickly with the right leader. If the leader was Pope Francis, for example, or Bill Clinton, a name like Bill Clinton, but obviously he's not going to do it because Hillary's running for president. A vegan can't be president or can't be married to one in 2016. Maybe in 2036 we'll have a vegan in the White House, but if we don't do something soon, it won't matter.
I know, exactly. And I don't know if you know my friend Professor Guy DeFrance in New York. He's a professor of law at Rutgers University. I love and adore him. He's interviewed on my series, and his abolitionist approach is the only way that's going to work, because all the welfarist organizations, they don't work. They're just creating billions and billions and billions of dollars and pounds every day, every week, every year for welfare. We have to understand that that is never going to stop the inhumane treatment of animals, which means that you have to look at an animal as a sentient being like you or me, who feel pain, who want to live, who have a right to be here. So his approach for me would then mean there would be no animals to eat. So, let's look back at World War II, for instance, when there was ration and people didn't have meat, they didn't have dairy, cancer went down, heart disease went down, So it's common sense. But as you've said, Jim, sometimes common sense is not that common.
I've talked about my leadership approach, and one of the leaders that I've written about, and I've actually met with his daughter numerous times, is one of those leaders is Ted Turner.
Yeah.
Ted Turner is a globally recognized name.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be the leader. I've been told he will not be the leader that does this for various reasons that I won't discuss. But if a man, just for example, like Ted Turner, really became enlightened, and I've studied his background. I read his biography last year, and he talked about his work with Jacques Cousteau. He funded Cousteau during the later years of his life, became really close to Cousteau. Cousteau was like a father to Ted Turner. And Cousteau told Ted Turner back then that he had been studying the trends, the environmental trends, and he said, Ted, I don't think we're going to make it as a species.
Yeah.
Our planet is not going to support our species very much longer, maybe 50 years, 100 years. And Ted couldn't believe that. He said, oh, no, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. And I just believe, I've met that man. I know that he has no fear of anything or anybody. People say, he would never do it. Jim, he owns a chain of restaurants called Ted's Montana Grill, sells buffalo meat. And all kind of every meat imaginable is sold in that restaurant. However, if he became enlightened and really understood that the only pathway to sustainability that he had drilled into him by Jacques Cousteau, that the most important thing in this world is sustainability, he could make a huge PR statement with that Ted's Montana Grill and say, we don't eat buffalo anymore. We save buffalo and we save all the animals. And you'd have this big PR message around the world that
that's right. Because
he wouldn't worry about the restaurant.
The thing is, Jim, what human beings aren't connecting with is they're killing the soil outside. And when you kill the soil outside, you kill the soil inside, because this is where we live. We live in our guts. So, as Bill, my husband's been teaching for 50 years, the same as I've been teaching for decades, when we eat from the environment, which is where we get our health, Is it any wonder why there's 85% of non-communicable diseases around the world now? Because we're killing the environment. And that has to start with animals, livestock, 51% greenhouse gases. But I don't want to get into all that with you because I'll have you here forever. But you're a beacon of light, and I love you, and I'm so happy we're friends because I do think you're like a male version of me. Okay, what's next on the agenda for making your big picture plan a reality?
Well, I'm going to continue working on the White House for as long as necessary. They've got 11 more months in office. I'll be probably writing to them and doing all that I can. I'd love to get meetings. I'd love to have them ask me to join the team. And I just really think that's the best chance that we've got right now. We're working on a few projects at the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies about how we can prove that those findings in the lab about cancer are transferable to humans. We know that they are from anecdotal data, but we don't. All of John Kelly's data is anecdotal, as he knows, but he chronicled it. He reported it. He told the world about what he saw happening to patients who had no support from their oncologists, their cancer doctors about what they were doing, and they still. Every one of them that did the diet is still living, with the exception of one, which he explained in the book. So that's what I will continue following up on, the leads that I think are the most powerful and the most likely to happen and worth that amount of time. I continue to work on various leaders around the world, but I don't have any great success stories to report.
Yeah, well, you're having the success stories you're reporting is you're writing to them every single day. Know, I mean, that in itself, most people are like, wow, what's the point? No, you're like me, and I know you're an incredible communicator. So when I introduced Bill, my husband, to you, you said, oh, I'm male Marlene. Eventually you found one.
So I have to talk about my mother for a second.
Sure.
Her birthday was last week. She would have been 100 had she survived. But she was kind of my inspiration. She always told me, Jim, I know you will be a success because you're the only one of my 5 children that was born on Success Road. And so I grew up with. I mean, that's how you plant a seed in a child. I think is you believe in them.
Sure.
Our address was 2200 Success Road, Memphis, Tennessee, a place that's now part of the Memphis airport. But and then later in life, she told me, Jim, God gave you a brain, and you need to use it to do the best things that you can do. And I do know that I have a unique background in this space of whole food, plant-based eating. Some people tell me, Jim, you're the only normal person we know that's doing this kind of crazy stuff. And well, I just feel like it's my obligation, leverage that background that I have and the gifts that I have to do the greatest good. And I just have a unique background for organizing and promoting. And I used to think activism was a dirty word. I no longer do. And then I had that funny story you promised me.
Yeah, I want you to share your funny story because I always feel as if I'm putting out bad news, the planet's ending, cancer's everywhere, so it's always nice. We all have funny stories, so go for it.
So my funny story took place in, one of the funniest one I could remember offhand, took place in 1987. I had just started to work for Polo Ralph Lauren Corporation. I had interviewed directly one-on-one with Ralph for the job. And Ralph was a great interviewer. He asked me one question, I answered it, and then I asked him a question, and he talked for the next 30 minutes. That was my interview with Ralph. But I was privileged to be able to work in his organization. However, the day I started in May of '87, he was in the hospital recovering from brain cancer surgery. And so it was kind of a quiet, somber tone around the headquarters office. And so I walked into my boss's office, which was next to Ralph's office, and the executive vice president of the company came up to me and said, in a whisper, Jim, he says, I'm glad you're here today. Ralph wants to see you. I said, he's here? Yeah. And I looked over to Ralph's office, and it was dark in there, fairly dark. And he said, it's dark because, he just had the brain surgery and everything, but he asked about you right away. And I said, really? Oh, God almighty. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? He says, just walk on in there. Just go ahead and walk on in there. He's expecting you. So I go and walk in the office there, and I look over there, and I see this shadow of a figure behind the desk, standing behind the desk, and then this huge roar of laughter coming from the lobby where everybody in the office had cooked this up and put this life-size figure of Ralph, cardboard cutout standing behind his desk. And I walk in and go, hello, Ralph. How are you? So anyway, that's hard to top that one. Well, I did somehow recovered that cardboard cutout myself after they were going to throw it away, and it stood in my garage for about 5 years.
Oh, wow. There you go. Well, I love your passion. I love your story. I love your vision. And no matter how old we all are, we can waken up by just, as you said, doesn't matter whether you're 5, 10, 15, 20, just keep going. And, like you were talking about your parents, what influences in our life, that we've had does help to, set the path and the tone for where we're going. The thing that I want to just say is, Jim, the more we bring everybody else on board, like your family, your friends, they share it. People, you can't beat them round the head. They either feel it or they don't. But my passion and your passion and everyone else that's on this series, I'm sure we're going to make big inroads. So I want to thank you very much for the wonderful work you're doing, for really pushing over there in America, to the White House about your passion for getting Colin Campbell and John Kelly and yourself to try and get some sense and sensibility around the whole thing with cancer. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll get together sometime soon, yeah?
I would love to. I was thrilled to be on your show, and I would dearly love to go to Scotland someday. I've never been there. I've been to the UK, to London, but I have never been to Scotland.
Well, you have to come to Scotland. It's a very beautiful place, very lovely, and very lovely people. We're very happy, friendly people.
Yes, I can tell.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Okay, Marlene, thank you.
Thank you.